what do you do other than vestibular rehab for migraine patients? We pointed out the lifestyle modification piece of it. What's the education we need to be providing for sleep hygiene, dehydration, stress management, possibly dietary changes, although I don't like to go right there. I think that can be really limiting for people. The list on dietary changes for migraines really, really long. And so to find the right piece for that person can be a long process. And a lot of patients have success altering other things. And so once we have appropriate amounts of hydration, possible supplements on board that are going to be create a happy brain, as I like to say, and then anxiety, stress management, the last big thing is exercise. And individuals with migraine commonly avoid exercise because it can be triggering to migraine. That's really hard because exercise is one of the best things you can do for migraine. It's an inflammatory issue, and exercise is great at dealing and reducing inflammation. And so tonight we talked about different programming methods that we can do to get individuals exercising in their home that limits head movement to reduce the possibility of becoming a migraine trigger without equipment. And how can we modify this to an individual who might be super sensitive to head motion, but still get really good muscle fatigue and feel like they were working hard? So that is what we talked about tonight using, for those of us who work out, you might be familiar with an every minute on the minute method and programming exercises. So every 40 seconds they're doing a low intensity but maybe high resistance exercise, and then taking 20 seconds off, getting into a different position that maybe does an isometric hold, so we're getting good muscle work but not a lot of head movement. And how can we get them into different planes, different positions without a lot of like up and down like we would get with squats, or a lot of up and down that we would get with lunges that can be provoking for the vestibular system. Because some patients with migraine aren't ready for that yet. We need to be better at educating them on the lifestyle management and getting the system ready for vestibular rehab, for these high motion tasks, so that they can tolerate it better. So it's really looking at how to treat the whole individual, and not just the vestibular piece of migraine.
So you kind of start with this early and give it to them as something that they're going to do as their home program consistently to build up their fitness.
Yeah, so I think my old approach, very vestibular focused. These individuals don't have great vestibular function. They can have slow VOR, motion sensitivity, visual sensitivity. And so our natural inclination as vestibular therapists is let's start vestibular rehab, right? Gaze stability, habituation training, visual sensitivity training. And a lot of migraine patients don't tolerate that. And we can actually, it's a slippery slope on being helpful versus migraine triggering and actually making the migraines worse. So I have found a lot of success in starting with just getting them moving from an exercise standpoint and general wellness and lifestyle modifications before I even start vestibular rehab, because a lot of times their bodies aren't ready to just jump right into gaze stability training.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. So what kinds of things are you doing in the first visit, like in the evaluation?
Obviously, taking a big, thorough history, figuring out what their triggers are. Many vestibular migraine patients don't come knocking on my door with a diagnosis of vestibular migraine. They're arriving because they're dizzy. So part of the challenge that first visit is recognizing that it actually is likely a migraine mechanism causing their dizziness versus another form of vestibular dysfunction. We talked about using a new migraine assessment tool that can kind of give us some objective value data on the severity of vestibular migraine that we can then track progress with over time. So potentially starting that during the initial evaluation. And then it's a lot of education on the lifestyle modifications.